Guys, before we even get into this morning's discussions, as you heard in our news in 90 seconds, with the extra sailings being put on, you want to ensure that you secure your sailing now. If you have any plans of coming to Tobago or leaving Tobago around Tobago Carnival period, so this is your time to do so. This morning, I have the privilege of sitting here in studio and having quite an interesting discussion. This morning, I'm going to be having two really exciting conversations, but my first conversation this morning will be with Dr. Keith Nurse, who is a senior economist from the World Trade Organization, and former World Trade Organization chair. This morning we are talking about development and expansion of the orange economy here in Tobago. Good morning, Dr. Nurse, and welcome.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly. Now, you have an extensive resume. For the persons who may not know you or be familiar with you. You are former principal / CEO of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College in St. Lucia, and you have worked as a senior economist and advisor on structural policy and innovation at the OECD Development Center in Paris. And that's, just the tip of the iceberg. You have also been the former chair of the World Trade Organization at the University of the West Indies, and you have done a number of things where economics is concerned and development. But this morning, you are going to give us the pleasure and the privilege of talking about development on a whole, and particularly where the orange economy is in Tobago and how we can really use that to help propel this economic diversification strategy that we've been trying to implement for so long. Good morning again and welcome.
Good morning, and thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on Tobago Updates. Tobago is one of my, was very critical in my formative age. I grew up in Tobago for a number of years. So my first recollection of living in Trinidad and Tobago was in Tobago. So, yeah. I would just add into my resume, I'm currently the president of COSTAT, which is the College of Science, Technology and Applied Arts in Trinidad and Tobago. We have operations in Tobago at the Port Mall. So just to let you know that we do operate in Tobago as well. But let me get straight to the question. Well, when we talk about the orange economy, we're really talking about, in part, the cultural and creative industries. So it's a term that we've been using for a long time now. And what it refers to are those industries that involve the production and distribution of, let's call it cultural or creative content. That could include everything from film and animation to books, song recordings, photographs, but it could also include live performances, whether you're talking about drama or whether you're talking about dance, and the list goes on. But in recent years, this notion has expanded even further to include some of the productions in social media. So we talk about the creator economy, and that has been growing by leaps and bounds globally. For Tobago, I've looked at the case of Tobago for a number of years. In fact, I've been involved in a number of studies over the years. So, for example, the strong area in Tobago's orange economy would be the festivals. So, as you just indicated in your news item, I'm pretty sure the seats on both the planes and boats are going to be filled up very quickly for Tobago Carnival. So that's an example of what we call festival tourism. And so that's a strong suit for Tobago. I've done work on your Tobago Jazz Experience. I've done work on your Blue Food Festival. And those are really good examples of how Tobago can enhance its orange economy or the creative sector.
Excellent. And, recently we saw an entire Tobago contingent go to New York for the Tobago Day celebration, as well as that Carry Festa celebration in Barbados. And, these are the type of investments that we see Tobago making internationally and regionally, to help to boost the confidence of our creators, but also, expand to the world what Tobago has to offer. What other types of key investments in the sector do you think is needed to help drive that its economic contribution back to Tobago's overall development?
Well, some of it has to do with some infrastructure. So when people come to Tobago, where can they see or experience productions? So, for example, Tobago Speech Band is one of my favorite, and it fits into the whole genre of a speech performance. And but where can you see it? Sometimes you get to see it at a hotel, but outside of that, where can you see it? I mean, the same problem applies in Trinidad as well. So outside of Carnival, where can you see a steel band performing, for example? If you're just a regular visitor or traveler to Trinidad and also to Tobago. So ensuring that we have not just the infrastructure, but we have the programming to showcase our art forms becomes a really important element of the tourism package. And so that's where our tourism package is fairly weak. The other area where we can expand is creating what I call an export platform for our creatives. So if they are involved in performance or even if they're involved in animation and film, how do we create an export capacity that would generate foreign exchange? Because everyone's talking about foreign exchange these days, and the creative sector has a critical role to play there. So in festival tourism, we attract visitors, we spend resources within our country. It has a direct impact or multiplier effect on the economy, and it can be very significant. So that's a definite area, and Tobago has, I think, a strong potential to attract an increased amount of festival tourism activity, because it's we need to strengthen the air bridge and the sea bridge to make it more seamless. But Tobago has all the makings for a strong festival tourism strategy.
Understand. And even as you spoke about the export of that animation potential, we know that Tobago has its animation studio down there at Cove. How do we begin to make those connections globally with the large companies, with the Hollywood studios, in order to get Tobago's indigenous, even animated products that represent our culture and our values and have that shipped out to the world?
I've actually visited the studio and met with the young people who are training. It was quite an exhilarating experience, I must admit. So kudos to those who've been involved in establishing that capacity. So there are two key things for the animation sector. What you want to do is attract, let's call it subcontracting work, so that you're working on behalf of animation companies. And that requires you to be out there showing your capacity. And this is where capacity does matter. So it can't be just one or two animators. You have to have a strong cadre of animators who can do many different aspects of the value chain. So there are terms like cleaning and compositing and editing and so on. So you have to have some critical mass. So you're talking about tens and twenties of young people who can do these particular jobs, and they must be trained to do specifically what is required. So that's the subcontracting route. So you would either go to some of the major companies in North America or in India. India does a lot of subcontracting work in this area, as well as some of the African countries and Central American countries. So you partner with them. But there's also an opportunity for building out indigenous content or original content. And this is where maybe drawing on some of the mythologies and stories of Tobago might be a basis for creating this new original content and then exporting that content. But yeah, animation is one of those areas where there's a strong capability in Tobago now. And yeah, I would love to see it expand even further.
Excellent. And, are there any courses at Costa right now available within the industry that persons can benefit from?
Yeah, we have a fairly strong music program. So that's one of the strongest areas. But we are also well known for our communication studies, graphic design, and so on. So recently we ran online course for creative writing, and it was offered across the whole Caribbean. So it focused on 4 key areas of creative writing. So writing for publishing, like book publishing and so on, which is what most people associate creative writing with. But we also did songwriting. We did writing for advertisement, copywriting. And then we also did script writing for like film and animation and so on. So yes, it was well received. We had guest lecturers from around the world, and so it was at a high level or high caliber area of training. And that's I can tell you because I've been involved in the film business for a long time now. A lot of people think it's about the tech, when in fact the story is what is the compelling value addition. If the story is no good, it doesn't matter how good your tech is. So getting the story down properly, learning how to write and be a creative writer is probably the most important investment in the creative sector. And that's something that we do at Costat as well.
Excellent. And, just talk to us a bit about how that investment in the artistry, the orange economy can truly help to boost Tobago's competitiveness throughout the region. Because when you look at the Caribbean, specifically from the European angle or from the United States angle, some people just paint the Caribbean territories with a broad stroke approach, thinking that they're all the same. You go to the beach, you have the same experience. How can we then harness the creative sector to differentiate ourselves from our neighboring islands?
Okay. Well, so one of the key strengths that the orange economy generates for the tourism sector is that it facilitates what we call destination branding. So Tobago has some fairly unique elements to it. So, for example, Tobago's changed hands more times than any other country in the Caribbean. If I recall, it's 42 times. And then, Tobago also has this unique experience of having hosted, if I could call it that, people from what are now called, they were called Colanders back then. So that's countries like Estonia and Latvia currently. And so, for example, I would say to you, how can we utilize some of these unique stories about Tobago to brand the destination? But you can also use the creative sector to do what we call intellectual property branding. So in Tobago, you have something called susumba, which is this unique product, very healthy. It's very good for you. I've had it. It does wonders. Why don't more people know about it? Why are you not in Tobago producing more of susumba? How can you use your creative economy to generate demand for something like susumba, given that really it's a superfood? So And then you utilize Susumba as the basis for attracting people to come to Tobago as part of the experience. So other countries have been able to do that sort of thing, utilize a product to brand the destination. And we call that intellectual property branding, because now you're making sure that it's either patented or copyrighted, as the case may be, if it's an experience. And this is the new tools that we are utilizing to galvanize value and foreign exchange and earnings for the creative sector and for the tourism sector by extension. So it's a novel approach. You know, when you go to many of the tourist conferences, all people talk about are what we say, heads in beds
Yeah.
and bums in seats. They talk about the airline industry and they talk about hotels. They don't talk about how to attract visitors, how to expand the media impact of the sector. Very much what you were talking about. How do you differentiate Tobago from the other territories? And so that's a very excellent question.
I'm glad that you brought that up, and I think that's an excellent idea. And for the persons who are listening, who are in the right positions to make the change and make the investment, I think that that's an excellent idea. I can already see the documentary playing on screens, even at Piaco Airport and at different places. I can see it. But we want to thank you so much for your time this morning and just giving us a little drop in the bucket of your knowledge. And is there anything that you want to say to Tobagonians or just, some of our policymakers as it pertains to utilizing what we have to get to where we want to be?
Yeah. Well, it ultimately comes down to both having a strategy and secondly, putting in place the required governance structures. And this is where we tend to fall down. We may have good ideas, but when we try to convert that into strategy, and strategy actually requires us to do some homework, like doing economic impact assessments, like putting in place mechanisms to ensure that we are utilizing the resources in an effective way and that we could document it, right? And that's all part of the governance framework. So those are the two areas I would say that we need to strengthen. So it's about institutional capacity to ensure that our successes can be reproduced again and again, irrespective of the personalities. So you might have one person who's driving this process and doing a very good job. And when that person leaves, all falls down. Well, you want to ensure that you have the capacity to reproduce, even if that person isn't around. So that's what we call institutionalization of the process. So that's where I would say that most of our countries in the region have fallen down. We are small economies and small, places, but we can ill afford to be repeating these kinds of mistakes again and again and again. So strategy and governance is the key point. Yeah.
Excellent, Dr. Nus, and I look forward to chatting with you again in the future. But we want to say thank you to you, and we're going to take a quick break right here, and we'll be back with much more conversations right here on Tobago Updates. See you soon right after this. It's a brand new morning.